Now look at this beautiful scene in front of us here. It's late afternoon, there's only about 20 minutes to go before sunset. Hardly any clouds in the sky. I've already taken a couple of photos here, and I'll share one now when the clouds were still around. And it looks really nice, but this is a bracketed shot, 5-shot HDR. But this tree is totally new to me. I've never shot here before, so new experience. It's a great feeling. My gear has always my Nikon D500. Today I'm using the Takina 11 to 20mm lens. I've got a Nissi polarizer plus a Nissi 3-stop medium grad ND filter. In grad filters you can have a hard grad, which will give you a straight line, a medium grad, which is halfway between a hard grad and a soft grad. A soft grad sometimes is not enough for an area like this. It is better suited to around the city where you just want a subtle difference from the sky to the foreground, because if I was using a hard grad or medium grad in the city, I would actually see the changing of the light on the buildings in front of me. Out here, medium grad is perfect. Now, as you can see in the video, there's not much clouds and all that. It will most likely turn out to be just an average sunset. We could get quite a bit of glow just on sunset because there's a lot of haze on the horizon out there. But these videos that I do, every one of them is different, and I try to impart a bit of knowledge in each one. And today what I really want to share with you is don't just go out when the clouds look the best, because if you do that, then you're not going to go out very often. I go out as often as I can, whether there is beautiful clouds about or if it's just a mundane day like today. Because on days like today, you really have to challenge yourself to actually get great photos. I'm used to this sort of light. I know that I'm not going to get fantastic photos as the sun's setting because there's no clouds. Look in the video. Can you see how I've actually framed my shot? I've actually put the sun behind the tree. Now, as the sun's going down, it's actually sort of angling down. It doesn't come straight down. The way I've actually worked it out is that as the sun sets, it's actually going to be in the trunk of the tree. So I'm going to get that beautiful glow around the tree, which is what I want. We're just going to take a couple of photos now in anticipation of the sunset. Let's set up the camera. Now, we've got a lot of wind around, and if you actually want to freeze frame this tree because the breeze is blowing quite a bit, then you're going to have to use a fairly fast shutter speed and a bit of depth. So what do? We're hamstrung. Now I want a bit of depth, so I've chosen f8. My shutter speed is 1/50th to get an even exposure. I'll take a photo. Now that looks really nice. Now if I zoom in, I can see just a little bit of blur in the leaves there. So what do? Do I reduce my aperture from f8 to, let's say, f5.6 or f4 and reduce my depth of field? No, this is what you do. You actually raise your ISO. So you can shoot in auto ISO if you want. I'm shooting in manual mode, not aperture priority. All I do is I'll raise my ISO to ISO 400. This is something that a lot of landscape photographers go like, oh, are you kidding me? We should be shooting at the base ISO for landscapes to get the best possible image that we can. That's a bit of a misdemeanor, because really, for scenes like this, if you've got a correctly exposed image, shooting at an ISO anywhere from ISO 100 to ISO 800, you're not going to get that much noise in your image. The secret is correctly exposing your image. Yes, if you underexpose your image, you go home and you're editing the image, you go, it's a bit dark, you raise up the shadows, you'll see the noise there. But even at ISO 100, if you do that, the noise will still be there. So let's raise it to ISO 400. Now, let's see what my shutter speed's telling me. 1/125th of a second. I've actually doubled my shutter speed. So we'll take another shot. Hardly the difference. Now let's zoom in, do a bit of pixel peeping. There you go. Just about freeze framed it, which is what I wanted. So this is something that you should remember. When there's quite a lot of wind around and you're wanting that sort of freeze frame, you don't want that blurriness. I like something when it's nice and still, but I don't like blurred leaves. Sometimes I'll accept it if I'm going for a really super long exposure, when there's clouds and they're just streaking across the sky, I'll accept that. But today, this is the reason why I haven't put an ND filter to give me a longer exposure, is because one, there's hardly any water around, and two, there's so much wind around with hardly any clouds that I just want that sort of frozen look on the tree. Another reason to do this, and this is important if you're bracketing and you're going to turn your images into a HDR, if you actually choose a shutter speed that is quite low, let's say 1/40th, 1/50th of a second, then when you're actually going to merge your 3 or 5 images together, you're actually going to see movement in the leaves, and you don't really want that. So you raise your ISO and raise your shutter speed at the same time. I said I was shooting at ISO 400, we'll take it up to ISO 500, we'll take it up to 1/160th of a second. That is super nice. Now I've just got minimal highlights blown, and they're just where the sun is setting. But the rest of the exposure, the top of the sky is a little bit dark, that's fine. Foreground's a little bit. I can easily raise that just slightly in Lightroom. Now, I've just got to apologize a little bit because it just got slightly dark. Taking videos at this time of the day is quite a struggle. Anyway, getting back to our scene here, look at this. We're actually getting some really nice light. The sun's just gone down over the mountains in the background here. I'm at 1/40th of a second. That looks really nice. You've probably heard me talk about blinkies. I can actually see it blink, because when I'm using the viewfinder and looking at my image, I can actually have quite a few different views. I can see my RGB histogram, I can see just the image, I can see all the settings, but I've also got one here that says RGB Highlights, and this is one that you really should be using when you're shooting in this sort of environment, because it's quite easy to actually get your highlights blown out without you realizing it. I call them blinkies, having the blinkies on tells me how much of my image is overexposed. And at the moment, the only part that's doing a very faint blinking is, I'll point to it here, right in this area here. But I'm totally fine with that, because watch what happens if I actually decide to get rid of the blinkies. There, the blinkies have gone. So this shot here, I just had a very small amount of blown highlights. The next one here, where the image has got no highlights blown, it's at 1/60th of a second. But look how dark it is compared to the last one here. If I chose the image that had no highlights blown, went home and edited in Lightroom, I would see a lot of the image had very dark shadows. And if I tried to lift the shadows up, I would actually get quite a bit of noise in the image. And this is what I'm going to do. Look at this image here now. This is that image that was quite dark, and I've actually zoomed into the shadow areas here, and I've actually brought them up. Can you see the noise? Can you see how much grain there is there? We don't need to have that grain there. We can accept just a little bit of blown highlights, especially like this. And this is the secret. This is why I've actually framed myself behind the tree here, to minimize the blown highlights. But we can see here now that we're actually losing light quite quickly. Even though we're still in summer, we're actually losing that light. We've lost the sun. It's actually a fairly dull light, but we've got to challenge ourselves. It's a fairly dull light. There's really not much color. When I go home in Lightroom, I'm actually going to be able to give myself a little bit more light. Sometimes shooting it like this actually makes us a better photographer. And this is the whole idea of photography. We have to challenge ourselves. I'm all for challenging myself. I've been in photography for quite a long time. Why do I still love it? Why do I still like going out taking photos, even on days like this? Because to me, days like this is when I push myself to the limit. Because when you've got everything in your favor, you've got streaking clouds, you've got the sun lighting up the clouds there, and it's just pink everywhere, so easy to do. But on days like today, this is where you actually have to challenge yourself. And this is where, if you don't get your settings right, you're going to go home with nothing. Because if they're overexposed, you're going like, oh, they're no good. If they're underexposed, they're too dark. Go out when there's just days like this, because you will find that going out on days like this is when you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to push yourself. So I've moved the camera around here. I just want to get a couple of last shots before we lose the total light. Again, just get the horizon straight, go back and focus on the tree again. Now I'm actually pressing the shutter, but you can see it's just taking a delay because I'm actually on the 2-second delay. Now this image here is actually, it doesn't look too bad, but you can see there's a lot of nothing at the top. And this image, I'm going to edit it and show it to you now. Can you see it's like in a pano mode? So it's actually cropped 16:9 because there's nothing up the top. There's no need to show it. I just want all that bottom area here, all that, the bottom 2/3 of the image. That's all I want, and this is all I'm showing. I'm happy with this. Look at the on the video here, look at the sky. We've actually got just a nice little orange glow, but because the light is so different from where the sun's setting to where our tree is now, because we've actually moved so far, we've moved about 20 meters. I want a totally different composition. Now there's just like, it's not a creek, but it's just a very small drain that's actually draining from a lagoon that's just behind us here in the mangroves. Can you see how it's actually just leading into the water? And we've got our tree about 1/3 of the way in. Now we're just going to take a photo. Wow, look at that. Look how nice that looks. Can you see all that water movement is actually going in? And we've got the tree about 1/3 of the way to the left. And we've got some beautiful glow on the right, but we've got some blue to the left. Just perfect. Now again, this image here, now I'm actually going to cut the top off and crop it to 16:9 like I did the other one. And look at the difference. So this is the same image edited. The first one here is just in a 6:4 format. This one here is 16:9. Can you see how much impact the cropped image has compared to the other image? And this is what I tell people. When we're editing images, don't just settle for just leaving your images in a standard 6:4 format. Crop it how you like. Now, sometimes I'll leave it at 6:4, but for images like today where there's just nothing in the sky, I will just crop out that area. Sometimes I will actually crop them square, other times I'll do like a pano style. It all depends what I want from the edited images. So that's a wrap for today. We actually got some really nice images. Now if you found value in this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If there's a photography topic that you'd like me to cover, leave it in the comment box below. I'm Charles for Charles in Photography. See you next time.